Cleveland in the 1930s was a city grappling with the Great Depression. Kingsbury Run, an industrial wasteland on the city's east side, was home to some of the most vulnerable citizens, the homeless, jobless, and impoverished. Hobo camps dotted the landscape, and crime was not uncommon. The Mad Butcher preyed on those who lived in this bleak environment, often targeting transients and the marginalized. His victims were difficult to identify, which added to the complexities of the case. This dark, desolate setting served as the perfect hunting ground for a ruthless killer. While the rest of the city tried to pull itself out of the economic despair, Kingsbury Run became the backdrop for one of the most horrifying crime sprees in U.S. history. The Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run's killings were notable for their brutality. The victims were typically decapitated, and their bodies were sometimes bisected or mutilated in other ways. In many cases, the heads of the victims were never found, making identification difficult. Due to the state of decomposition of some remains and the lack of identifying features, only two of the Mad Butcher's victims were definitively identified, Edward Andraschi and Florence Polilio. The discovery of the first body came in September 1935, when two boys stumbled upon the remains of a man near Jackass Hill and Kingsbury Run. The body was naked, the head missing, and the torso sliced in half. Over the next 3 years, more bodies would surface, often discovered in similar gruesome conditions. Some victims had been exposed to chemicals to delay decomposition, adding a macabre layer to the killer's methods. Many of the victims were believed to be drifters or sex workers, which made it challenging for authorities to track down their identities or to piece together a pattern that would lead to the killer. The anonymity of the victims played into the killer's favor, allowing him to operate without detection while instilling fear throughout Cleveland. The involvement of Eliot Ness, Cleveland's public safety director at the time, brought national attention to the case. Ness had achieved fame during Prohibition as the leader of the Untouchables, the team that helped bring down Al Capone. He was seen as a law enforcement hero, and many believed he would be the one to solve the case and bring the Mad Butcher to justice. Ness threw significant resources into the investigation. He ordered the police to patrol the hobo camps and even had a large shantytown in Kingsbury Run raided and burned to the ground in an attempt to flush out the killer. Despite these efforts, the Mad Butcher was never caught. Frustration mounted as more bodies were discovered, and the press began to question whether Ness was capable of catching such a cunning and elusive killer. Some suspects were brought in for questioning, but none were definitively linked to the murders. One of the more infamous suspects was a man named Dr. Francis E. Sweeney, a troubled veteran with ties to the medical field, which could have explained the precision with which the victims were dismembered. Sweeney was subjected to a polygraph test, which he reportedly failed, but no concrete evidence linked him to the crimes. Sweeney was eventually committed to a mental institution, where he lived out the remainder of his life. Some theorize that Sweeney may indeed have been the killer, but without definitive proof, the case remained unsolved. Several theories have emerged over the years about the Mad Butcher's identity. Some believe that the killer was a medical professional due to the skillful dismemberment of the bodies, while others suggest that the killer might have been a butcher or someone familiar with anatomy. One theory posits that the Mad Butcher was a sadistic drifter who traveled from city to city, leaving behind a trail of dismembered bodies. Another theory connects the Mad Butcher to other unsolved torso murders in Pennsylvania and New York, suggesting that the killer may have been a transient who moved between states. The legacy of the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run is one of terror, mystery, and frustration. Despite the involvement of one of the most famous lawmen in American history, the case remains unsolved, leaving countless questions unanswered. The anonymity of the victims, the brutality of the murders, and the elusiveness of the killer all contribute to the enduring fascination with the case. The Mad Butcher has influenced numerous books, films, and documentaries, and the case is often cited in discussions about the limitations of forensic science and criminal investigations in the 1930s. The dark and chilling tale of the Cleveland torso murderer continues to captivate true crime enthusiasts, and the shadow of the Mad The Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run represents one of the darkest chapters in Cleveland's history. The killer preyed on the vulnerable, leaving behind a trail of mutilated bodies and a city gripped with fear. Despite the best efforts of law enforcement, the Mad Butcher was never caught, and the case remains an enduring mystery. The gruesome crimes, combined with the failure to bring the killer to justice, have cemented the Mad Butcher's place as one of America's most notorious and elusive serial killers. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy true crime stories and chilling unsolved mysteries, be sure to like this video, leave a comment, and hit the subscribe button for more spine-tingling content.